So here is that code. We have our numDays helper function, and down here is the code that our friend suggested. This is the numDays function that our client will call. Our client may not even know that we have a helper function to assist us. As far as our client is concerned, we have fulfilled our promise if we have written this function correctly to calculate the number of the days given the month and the year. Now we have a little test over here. We're calling our numDays function with the month 2 and the year 2025. It just so happens that I am recording this video in February of 2025, and we should print that answer. And of course, February of 2025 has a maximum of 28 days, since 2025 is not a leap year. So let's go ahead and click through this code. So of course, we start at line 1, we define our helper function. Again, we're only defining it, we're not executing it until that function is called. Similarly, we're merely defining the numDays function, and now we're ready on line 14. What do we print? Well, we have to evaluate this object before we can print it, and that requires calling the numDays function with the two arguments month equal to 2 and year equal to 25. So it will not surprise us to move from the global frame to the frame numDays. It won't surprise us that our red arrow has jumped from line 14 to line 10, and now we are in this function where we have initialized our parameters month and year with the arguments that were passed. Our code now proceeds to line 11. And on line 11, this is the logic that our friend had proposed to check if the year, our friend had said the way you check if a year is to simply calculate the remainder after dividing by 4, and if that remainder is 0, then it's a leap year, and if not, then it's not a leap year, at least according to our friend. So what is this calculation on line 11 going to produce when the year is 2025? Of course, 2025 is not divisible by 4, so this expression on the right is going to be false, and so isLeap, when we click on next, is going to be initialized to the Boolean object false. And now we are ready to use that information along with the month and call the helper function. So once again, before I click on next, I would like you to imagine what is going to happen. Imagine how this picture is going to change. Imagine how the red arrow is going to move, and only then should you proceed. I click on next, and the red arrow has jumped to line 1. We are now moving away from the numDays frame. We are now in the numDays helper. And now we have initialized the month to be the same object and the isLeap to be the false that was calculated. And we are now ready to proceed inside the helper. So we continue. This month is a legal month. It does not satisfy this condition. So we will skip past the if condition and we will come here. Since the month is 2, we will come in to line 5, and remember that the way to read this is if it is a leap year, then we're going to return 29, otherwise we're going to return 28. And isLeap, according to the numDays helper function, is false. So it's going to return 28. When I click on next, it won't surprise you that the return value is 28. This return value is the one that is going to be returned here. This was the line where we call the helper function. So now we have the object that the numDays function should return. Right now we are still in the numDays helper frame about to return a value. Observe what happens when we click next. I no longer am in the numDays helper frame. In fact, that frame has disappeared. If you click on previous, that is where we were, but we were ready to return, so this frame is no longer needed. This object that the numDays helper function was returning, this is captured, this object is captured by the function which called the helper function. And what does that function want to do? It wants to return that object itself. So this object which is being returned by the numDays helper function is going to become the object that the numDays function is now going to return. This object 28 is the answer to the question, how many days are there in February of 2025? And so this object is going to be returned to the print statement, which is where I called the numDays function. So when I click on next, this object is going to be printed, and so up here you will see 28 get printed when I click on next. And there is the 28. So this control flow is not trivial to understand. I strongly encourage you to click through this yourself at your pace. Every one of the points at which a function is called or when the function returns is tricky to understand, and it's important for you to spend time clicking through this and making sure each step makes sense. I encourage you to try out different values of month and year and see different execution paths. Now, remember, our friend had suggested this logic to calculate whether a year was a leap year or not. It turns out our friend's logic is incorrect. And to understand why it's incorrect, you would need to look up the exact definition of a leap year. So why don't you take a look at some trustworthy online resources and then come back and try and answer these questions, and then we'll discuss.